The 7th Democratic debate will take place on January 14th, 2020 and feature just 6 candidates: Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, and Tom Steyer. This debate will be the first of 2020 and last before the critical Iowa Caucus, which will be held on February 3rd and assign the first 41 pledged delegates for the primary contest. The January debate will be held at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, and hosted by CNN and the Des Moines Register. The moderators will be Wolf Blizter, Phillip, and Brianne Pfannenstiel. 3 more debates will follow next month in advance of the next 3 primaries and caucuses: New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. Each of the debates will be held in their corresponding early voting states. One at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire, hosted by ABC News and WMUR-TV in partnership with Apple News. The next in Las Vegas, Nevada, hosted by MSNBC and the Nevada Independent. And the final February debate will be held in Charleston, South Carolina, and hosted by CBS News and the Congressional Black Caucus Institute in partnership with Twitter. In this video, I'm going to do my best to fill you in on what you need to know going into the Iowa debate. News stories that will affect topics of conversation, what's going on in the primary generally, and what you're likely to hear from each of the candidates. In a sense, this should serve for the debate as an answer to this question: what's the context? First things first, there is technically a chance that the January debate will have to be rescheduled, as the impeachment trial against Donald Trump is set to begin in the Senate next week. Because 3 of the 6 debate participants, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Amy Klobuchar, are sitting senators, they are required to serve essentially as jurors for the Trump trial. If the trial is set to begin before or on Tuesday night, the DNC will move the event, but more likely the trial will begin sometime soon after the debate. But even if the trial doesn't postpone the debate, it is still likely to affect the questions posed by the moderators. With Trump's impeachment moving into the next phase, it's highly likely that impeachment will be talked about. This is, in my view, unfortunate since every candidate on stage supports impeachment. In fact, the only Democratic presidential candidate who has not either voted for impeachment or said that they would have was Tulsi Gabbard, who was not for impeachment before she decided she was for it, before she decided to vote present in the actual vote. Gabbard has stated that her vote was in protest of the impeachment process, not a rejection of the general idea that Trump ought to be impeached.
It was and continues to be extremely partisan. And this is something that the founders warned against in the Federalist Papers, that they feared that the process would result in a conclusion that was based on the strength of one party over another, rather than an objective assessment of innocence or guilt, and that such an outcome would only further divide our country. This is why I voted present.
Tulsi Gabbard's position on impeachment, of course, will not likely make the debate stage, as she herself has failed to qualify once again. In order to qualify for the Iowa debate, candidates had to secure 225,000 unique donors and earn at least 5% in 4 DNC-approved national polls, or 7% in 2 early state polls, released between November 16th and January 10th. Both Andrew Yang and Cory Booker met the donor threshold but failed to qualify based on polling. Yang earned 1 qualifying poll while Booker had 0. With neither Yang nor Booker making the debate stage, this will be the whitest debate yet. Tulsi Gabbard too might have added some color since she's of mixed origin, white, Polynesian, and Asian descent. She failed to qualify by either threshold. Julian Castro, of course, will not be making the event, as he has recently dropped out of the race and probably would not have made the debate stage anyway. The whiteness of the debate will likely become a debate question, as it did last time while Yang was still in. That said, some minority groups will still have representation. Bernie Sanders is of Jewish heritage, Pete Buttigieg is gay, and Tom Steyer is a billionaire. No comment on Elizabeth Warren. Another subject that is likely to gain attention in this debate is foreign policy, due to the recent dust-up with Iran. As I'm sure you're well aware, US-Iranian relations are extremely volatile at the moment, with US forces on high alert in anticipation of possible Iranian drone strikes. Iran recently launched more than a dozen missiles at 2 Iraqi bases that host US troops. The move was a reaction to the recent US drone strike that assassinated top Iranian general Qasem Soleimani. Trump and US officials have claimed that the strike was carried out to prevent an imminent attack in the region that would have put American lives at risk, but have declined to provide evidence to support that claim. Adding insult to injury from the Iranian perspective, Trump repeatedly called the Iranian military leader the T-word, a word that Tehran is now branding the US military with. The mounting tensions are likely a matter that will gain attention in this debate. Foreign policy is typically, in my view, underemphasized in debates, as the subject is, in my view, a surprisingly low priority for American voters. A Gallup survey of top priorities ranked foreign policy in 7th place behind taxes, weapons, and gender equality. Foreign affairs also didn't make the top 6 in a more recent Pew study. And in a more detailed analysis of top issues by Gallup, the top foreign policy related topic was international issues, ranking as the top issue for just 2% of American voters. While there really are plenty of other issues worthy of discussion, it seems to me that the citizens of the global hegemon would want to pay a little more attention to how America is running the rest of the world. One significant piece of news that will no doubt affect the dynamics at play in the 7th Democratic debate are the strong poll numbers coming in for Bernie Sanders. Surging after the last debate, Sanders has begun polling above 20% nationally for the first time since April of 2019. He's leading in Iowa with a statistically insignificant 0.3 points above Mayor Pete. In New Hampshire, Senator Sanders leads by 2.7 points above Biden, who is in a statistical tie with Buttigieg for second place. These strong polls for Sanders are especially good indicators for the candidate's prospects in the Iowa Caucus, since he has an especially youthful and enthusiastic base, having earned the largest number of donors in the race. Adding to his recurrent strong fundraising figures, Sanders raised more than $34.5 million in the fourth quarter of 2019, nearly $10 million more than Mayor Pete's $24.7 million raised during the same period. Sanders' fundraising prowess also means only self-funding billionaires Steyer and Bloomberg have a chance of competing with his spending power. The very real potential for victory for Bernie Sanders has not been lost on the mainstream media or Democratic Party insiders. The Associated Press recently reported fears of Sanders' win growing among Democratic establishment. Then the New York Times featured on its opinion page, "Of course Bernie can win." And the Wall Street Journal featured an editorial claiming, "Be prepared for President Sanders, the Vermont socialist could soon become the frontrunner for the Democratic nomination." The Independent reported from New York, "Against all odds, it looks like Bernie Sanders might be the Democratic nominee after all." On January 7th, CNN's Chris Cillizza even put out an editorial entitled, "Bernie Sanders could actually win this thing." That came just a couple weeks after Cillizza boldly proclaimed Sanders to be the only loser of the last debate, aside from the first hour and Pete Buttigieg, who he also labeled as a winner. So quite the quick turnaround for Cillizza. The fact that Sanders is widely becoming accepted as a very likely winner of not just the Iowa Caucus, but the nationwide primary contest as well, puts a very clear target on his back. Other candidates are likely to go after him. And to be honest, the moderators are likely to try to take him down as well. Last debate, there was a particularly harsh interaction with the moderator. I don't expect him to be given softer treatment by CNN. Sanders actually does quite well when he's got his back against the wall. While he generally avoids launching attacks on other candidates, when he is criticized, his defenses and counterattacks tend to be quite effective. In terms of the other candidates, the most likely to go on the offensive against Sanders are those in ideological opposition who have demonstrated a propensity to debate aggressively. Klobuchar has seen slight improvements in her polling and better reception in debate analyses since she began getting more aggressive, so she's more than likely to take a swing at Bernie. Joe Biden may generally want to avoid conflict with at least smaller candidates, but sparring with Sanders is probably seen as a necessity at this point by his campaign. Buttigieg, who like Klobuchar has become increasingly feisty in these events, will no doubt launch an attack on Sanders as well. He's neck and neck with Sanders in Iowa, and winning there is really Pete's best, if not only, path to securing the nomination. Elizabeth Warren, on the other hand, is unlikely to attack Sanders, as the two are ideological allies who have thus far avoided criticizing each other on stage and likely made a non-aggression pact prior to launching their campaigns. Steyer is also unlikely to attack Sanders, as he has taken up a passive approach to the debates, and let's be honest, such a conflict would probably end poorly for the billionaire. While Steyer has managed to make the debate stage once again, and Andrew Yang hasn't, mega donor Tom is actually polling behind Yang in the national polls, and at least from my perspective seems to have little to offer in terms of unique policy suggestions or political experience. The best case he's made for himself so far in my view is that he knows business, which kind of reminds me of the case the current president was able to make for himself back in 2016. I don't expect much from Steyer in this debate, although it is noteworthy that he did do a little better than usual back in December. Amy Klobuchar did incredibly well in the December debate in my view, and earned a low-key surge into 5th place in New Hampshire over the holidays. Not exactly a headline-worthy win, but it's good news for her campaign. I anticipate that Klobuchar will enter the debate feeling good and try to recapture the magic of the December debate. This could mean launching another attack on Pete Buttigieg or another candidate. At the same time, it's probably worth noting that Klobuchar really has virtually no chance of securing the Democratic nomination at this point. Even with strong attacks on Mayor Pete in the 6th Democratic debate and a number of other great moments, she's not performing well nationally. Like Steyer, she's behind Yang in the RCP averages, and behind 3 candidates competing along the same ideological path, the 3 Bs, Biden, Bloomberg, and Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg is certainly one of the most important candidates to watch in this debate. He has seen steady declines in his polling since November, and in many ways can no longer be seen as a top-tier candidate. He is, however, certainly a top candidate for Iowa, polling neck and neck with Bernie Sanders in that state. Should Pete win the Iowa Caucus, it could lead to surging throughout the rest of the country, which might win him the nomination. Should he lose significantly in Iowa, his chances of winning are drastically reduced in a single moment. The South Bend mayor is continuing to face attacks from both the left and the right. Conservatives have been criticizing Pete recently over his tweet, "Innocent civilians are now dead," because they were caught in the middle of an unnecessary and unwanted military tit for tat. His tweet allowed for the US to share some of the blame after an Iranian missile accidentally shot down a Ukrainian airliner. If you can think more than 2 steps back, I think Pete's absolutely correct, by the way. The mayor has also been facing increasing heat from Black Lives Matter, who recently picketed his visit to a homeless shelter in California. The mayor, recurrently unpopular with black voters, neglected to return home after a homeless South Bend resident, Anthony Young, passed away from hypothermia over the holidays. The shooting of Eric Logan by South Bend police is also still an issue dogging Pete's campaign. One or more of these issues could be a weak point for other candidates to strike at in the January debate. While not flourishing quite as much as a few months ago in the polls, Elizabeth Warren has been making a bunch of strange waves as of late. She recently alleged that Trump's Iran attack was potentially a political calculation to distract from impeachment. She got the endorsement of recent primary dropout Julian Castro, who I think correctly pointed out that the senator would be a less divisive choice than either Biden or Sanders. He was less correct in his non-verbal endorsement of her dance moves. Yeah, don't encourage her, man. By the way, there's apparently been a whole big critical reaction of her dancing and a counter-reaction to that, calling the criticism of her dancing misogynistic. I really hope that doesn't get addressed in this debate. It's silly, she dances goofy, and guess what? It doesn't matter at all. Warren dances goofy and is awkward on Facebook Live.
I'm Tracy. I love you too. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
I'm glad you're here.
Enjoy your beer.
Sanders has the worst posture in the world and once made the mistake of recording himself talk singing.
The willingness to stand up against the mighty and the powerful, the human spirit.
Biden constantly looks either shocked or confused. Buttigieg has an annoyingly fake, folksy way of talking.
I am running to be a president for the guy who's up early scraping the windshield on his way to the first of his jobs, for the single mom who is at work keeping an eye on the clocks.
Meanwhile, the President of the United States speaks in sentence fragments.
We got there very early. We saw what was happening. I saw what was happening. I said, what's that all about? and that was going to be another Benghazi.
Tweets like he failed 8th grade English, and this is what his face looks like. Presidents don't have to be cool, and they usually are not. Speaking of Joe Biden, while his fundraising and polling in Iowa and New Hampshire remained relatively weak, he still has a strong lead in the national polls and in 2 other early states, Nevada and South Carolina. He also remains the overwhelming favorite amongst black voters. He has more than double the black support of Sanders, his next closest competitor, according to a new Washington Post Ipsos poll. He also recently got the endorsement of Eric Garcetti, the LA mayor who previously considered a presidential run himself. One issue which Biden may have to grapple with in this debate is his 2003 Iraq vote, which has come under renewed criticism by the Sanders campaign. Sanders speechwriter David Sirota and senior campaign advisor Jeff Weaver have both recently come out accusing Biden of trying to rewrite history, claiming to have opposed Bush's invasion despite the fact that he voted for the action at the time. In the face of heightened tension with Iran, this issue may have renewed pertinence. Biden, like Sanders, has repeatedly criticized the Trump administration's decision to assassinate Soleimani. At the same time, his checkered past may look unappealing for pro-peace Democrats compared to Bernie's more consistent opposition to US military aggression. At the end of the day, despite the fact that Biden's nationwide polling is the strongest in the race, this debate will more than likely be perceived by the candidates as a debate for Iowa. If that holds true, Buttigieg, not Biden, would be seen as the frontrunner amongst the moderate candidates, as he is the closest competitor for Sanders in that state. In this way, while Biden happens to be doing better overall, the top moderate actually changes depending on your answer to this question. What's the context?